Arsenal accept Aubameyang departure, coronavirus affecting the transfer market, Henderson's in demand, the Premier League set a final date, and a transfer roundup all coming up in the next few minutes as I'm your host, Matt Froelich. You are the Onefootballers and this is the Daily News. First off, and yes, of course, because there's no football, there will be no power rankings this week, but we're going to talk about Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang because apparently Arsenal have resigned themselves to the fact that he will be leaving during the next transfer window, whenever that is, and they want around 50 million for their striker. Now, we've spoken about it before, how Aubameyang's contract is running out at the end of next season, and well, they know that if they're going to sign him to a massive bumper new one, they're going to be taking Aubameyang well into his 30s. That's not to say that he's going to be a bad player, it's just kind of a lot of money to give to quite an older player, especially as he wants a brand new deal with even more money. On top of this though, on the flip side, Aubameyang is Arsenal's best striker and he's scoring all the goals. You can kind of see why they'd want to do it. So the rumour of him moving to Barcelona has been around for quite a while and looks like he won't be signing a new deal, so Arsenal are pretty much going to have to sell him this summer. As I mentioned before, 50 million seems to be around the mark, which actually wouldn't be too bad, I think. They signed him a few years ago for about 60 to 65, got a good few years service out of him, a hell of a load of goals, and then to sell him for only 10 to 15 million less, that's pretty good business by Arsenal and not something you necessarily associate with North London club at the moment. And talking about good deals or bad deals in the transfer market, the outbreak of the coronavirus at the moment has meant that some clubs are facing further financial difficulty. This means that two things. A, there might not be enough money to spend in the summer. I say enough, as much as before. And B, clubs might be willing to accept a little less than before. I think Jadon Sancho is a perfect example of this. At the moment, Borussia Dortmund, in my eyes, could definitely charge up to 150 million for Sancho. I mean, he's turning 20 next week. He's a young superstar with years ahead of him to become even better than he is. And actually, calling him a young superstar makes it seem like he's not actually quite there yet. He's probably one of the best in the world. On current form in the last 18 months, name me 10 players who've been better than Jadon Sancho. Exactly. If you combine that with his age, then yeah, they could probably charge up to 150 million. But this is where the crisis is affecting them. There isn't going to be that much money for other teams to spend because, well, they're going to have to put the money into keeping the clubs afloat. In the Premier League, I don't think this is such a big issue because we all know that Premier League money is just utterly ridiculous. It's almost sickening. But for some other leagues, especially in the Bundesliga, it may be difficult, maybe not so much for Dortmund, but certainly for some of the smaller teams to keep afloat. So maybe Dortmund go and sell Sancho for 100 million instead of 150. Yes, I know you're all laughing saying, Matt, it's still 100 million and that's still more than enough to see Dortmund through any sort of financial crisis. Well, you'd like to think so anyway. But it does mean that the buying team are probably getting 50 million off. Now, that does seem actually like quite a lot when you consider it will be a third of Jadon Sancho's price. By the way, I think that's around his market value, 150 at the moment. But it is a massive, massive deal and could potentially have repercussions for the rest of the leagues. I'm not talking about that Sancho deal in particular, but I just think you'll see clubs who probably don't have as much money to spend as they thought, especially if flagship competitions like the Europa League and the Champions League aren't finished or don't finish with the amount of TV deals, sponsorship deals, even the amount of games and the gate receipts. Clubs that have less money to spend, they'll definitely have to be paying all of their staff through all of this or making cuts, which is even worse. And, well, there's more important things to worry about from a club's point of view and protecting their futures rather than going and splashing hundreds of millions on brand new players. But moving on from that and to actually some transfer market news talking about loads of money because it's still there in the Premier League anyway. And Dean Henderson, the Sheffield United goalkeeper, was on loan from Manchester United, could be rewarded with a new £100,000 a week contract. What on earth was I talking about? Clubs tightening the purse strings and not spending so much money. The problem with this is that United are going to give it to him and probably still send him out on loan. Apparently the other day, Dean Henderson told his Sheffield United teammates that if he isn't guaranteed number one spot at Manchester United, he will be back with the Blades on loan next season. This year he's been brilliant. They've only conceded 25 in 28 Premier League games and they're up to 7th. But what I just think for Manchester United is that it seems to be a case of keeping him just so that no one else can have him. Reports are suggesting that both Chelsea and Spurs are interested in Henderson, hence why United want to offer him a big new deal. But if they can't offer him game time, which they can't because David De Gea is definitely the number one at the club, then what on earth is going to happen with his career? Surely there gets to a certain point when you can't really be considered a youngster who's good to go out on loan, and you need to make a case to be number one at a top Premier League club and, personally in my opinion, get into the England squad. I know the Euros isn't happening this summer and Henderson will have another season under his belt by the Euro 2021 comes around, but for me, at the moment, Henderson should definitely be first choice. As with the moves, Chelsea, it's clear they're having a keeper problem. Willy Caballero is not fit to deputise for absolutely anybody, and Kepa just doesn't really seem to get on with the club at the moment. He's either dropped or he's arguing, and Lampard's not so sure about his future, and he could be moved on to the next transfer window. As for Spurs, Gazaniga's a decent backup and Hugo Lloris is really past his best, so Henderson will probably be a welcome addition to Jose Mourinho's side. But moving on and talking of the Premier League, and they're still going to be pushing for an end date for the rest of the season. Now, we brought to you guys on Tuesday that UEFA have postponed their Euros to next year, and that leaves a window of opportunity for the domestic leagues to complete their season before the end of June. That is apparently the date that they all want to stand by, June the 30th. Because of the meeting on Tuesday, now the Premier League clubs are all getting together. I say getting together, they're having a conference call because you must stay indoors. Stay healthy and wash your hands. Anyway, they're all getting together over a conference call to decide when they think it's realistically possible to finish the season off. Nobody knows how this pandemic is going to pan out, and although the league is suspended until the 4th of April at the moment, I think we can say with pretty much certainty that we won't be having football back by then. So this would mean that with the 9 or 10 games that each club has left to play, they could fit them in to a really cramped schedule maybe towards the end of May, beginning of June. This is obviously going to be exceptionally difficult, but it's believed that the outcome of this meeting today will see the Premier League say that they must complete the season, even if it's played behind closed doors. Now, of course, this will be really, really devastating, especially for the fans and the atmosphere, and especially if you think for Liverpool fans who want to be there to see their team lift their first title in 30 years. Unfortunately, it looks like with this special sort of scenario, that may not happen, and if anything, we can be thankful if the domestic season is finished by the end of June. So lastly but not least, a quick roundup of the rest of the day's transfer news, where Arsenal are interested in signing Swedish wonder kid 16-year-old Emil Roback. Manchester City and Juventus will battle it out for Lyon's midfielder Houssem Aouar, who's planning to leave his boyhood club at the end of the season. Inter Milan are interested in renewing Ashley Young's contract, which also expires at the end of the campaign. And talking of contract expiries, Chelsea's Brazilian star Willian has said that he will play beyond the contract expiry date, which for most players is July the 1st, because, well, if the season needs to be finished, he'll be there for Chelsea. Quite nice to see that kind of loyalty in this day and age. And as a quick reminder, before we finish today's daily news, guys, make sure you stay safe out there, and hopefully the football will be returning to our screens, but more importantly, health will be returning to the majority of the world. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below on today's daily news and absolutely everything else. Maybe let us know what you're doing whilst you're stuck in quarantine too. Whilst you're there, you can smash the like button down below and click here or here to check out all of the other videos we've got going on Onefootball. But until next time, I will see you guys later.